For years, their very existence was one of the military's best-kept secrets. They were a totally new kind of warrior, custom-built for a new kind of war. So today we're diving into the story of the original Navy SEALs, forged in the jungles of Vietnam. And we're going to hear it in their own words.
Okay, just let that sink in for a second. That one sentence, right there, really captures the whole spirit of what we're talking about. These weren't just soldiers following orders. These were men who actively went looking for the hardest, most dangerous work they could find. It just sets the stage perfectly, you know?
So where did a force like this even come from? Well, their story begins at a time when the very definition of war was changing, and that created a need for something completely new. Yeah, back in the early 60s, President Kennedy looked at the global landscape and realized that the old way of fighting wasn't always going to cut it. He saw the need for special operations to win special kinds of war, and right out of that idea, the SEAL teams were born.
This chart really nails the fundamental difference. You know, at a time when warfare was becoming more and more remote, long-range, impersonal, the SEALs were designed to do the exact opposite. Their entire job was to operate deep inside enemy territory, up close and personal.
And that's the key takeaway, isn't it? This was not a job for anyone chasing glory. Secrecy was everything. These guys knew that their biggest wins would never ever be public knowledge. The real payoff was that quiet internal pride, and knowing the guy next to you respected what you did. Okay, so if you're going to create this unsung soldier, you need a training program that's, well, unlike anything else on Earth. You need a crucible that doesn't just test a man, but completely remakes him.
That's how one of the originals described the infamous Underwater Demolition Team Training, or UDT, which was the pipeline to becoming a SEAL. The whole program was basically engineered to find your absolute breaking point, and then just keep pushing.
But here's the fascinating part, the philosophy behind all the pain. Yeah, the physical stuff was insane, running for miles in the sand, crawling through mud flats, but the real war was the one being fought inside your own head.
The instructors had this core belief. Pretty much anyone who was reasonably athletic could physically get through the course. The X factor was willpower. If a guy wanted it badly enough, there was literally nothing the instructors could do to make him quit. It was always his choice to stay or go.
And all that suffering, all that punishment, it had one single purpose. It wasn't random cruelty. It was a very precise process designed to strip away every ounce of quit you had, leaving only the kind of person who could get the mission done, no matter how impossible it seemed.
And the men who made it out of that crucible, they were transformed. They became the ultimate military specialists, masters of infiltration, trained to show up where the enemy would never, ever expect them.
I mean, their name says it all. Sea, air, and land. They could come from anywhere. They had rebreathers for underwater work that didn't leave a single bubble. They could jump from ridiculously high altitudes or just slip silently off the side of a riverboat. They were, as one of them put it, the most qualified troop there is.
It's a question a lot of them probably ask themselves. Parachuting was an essential skill, of course, but for a lot of these guys, it was also this huge personal and psychological hurdle they had to clear over and over again.
For these men, jumping wasn't just a way to get from point A to point B. It was about staring fear right in the face. That act of just stepping out into nothing, that was a test of raw individual courage that you had to pass all by yourself every single time. And that initial moment of terror, it would give way to this incredible feeling. They called it like sitting in a chair in the sky, a sense of total freedom, of accomplishment, knowing you weren't pushed out that door, you chose to go.
So, you've got these operators with this incredible, diverse skill set. What was their actual day-to-day job in Vietnam? Well, it wasn't about fighting big battles. Their work was way more subtle and a whole lot more dangerous.
Here's the thing. Their number one mission wasn't direct combat. It was intelligence. They were the tip of the spear, the eyes and ears on the ground. As one SEAL put it really bluntly, we don't go in to kill Charlie, we go in to capture him. Why? Because a live prisoner could give you information that was 1,000,000 times more valuable than a dead enemy.
And this is a perfect example of what that looked like in practice. A SEAL patrol might see something that seems minor, like a bunch of rice being moved down a river. But to an intelligence officer, that tiny piece of the puzzle could signal a major enemy buildup and tip them off to an attack before it ever happened.
Now, to gather that kind of intel and, actually survive deep in enemy country, one rule stood above all others: the element of surprise. It wasn't just a good idea, it was their lifeline.
And that was the cold, hard reality of their work.
The second the enemy knew you were in their backyard, your chances of getting home dropped to almost zero. That's why patrols were done in absolute silence. No talking, every single command was done with hand signals because one wrong sound, one snapped twig could get the whole team killed.
So that brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. Why? Why would anyone volunteer for a life of nonstop hardship, of total secrecy, of constant mortal danger? The answer is probably not what you'd think.
By any standard, these guys were among the most decorated units of the entire war. I mean, the sheer volume of medals for valor is just staggering. It's a stark reminder of how effective they were and the kind of insane risks they were taking every single day.
But what's so fascinating is how the men themselves saw all these honors. To them, the medals, the ribbons, they were just tokens. That wasn't what got them out of bed in the morning. The real reward was something internal, something you could never pin on a uniform.
And in the end, that's what it all came down to. The ultimate motivation wasn't a piece of metal. It was the title itself. It was the incredible pride that came from surviving that crucible, from earning your place in what they believed was the best, most elite fighting unit on the planet. The real reward was simply the right to be called a Navy SEAL.